Welcome to season two of the Happy Sensory Corner podcast. At Mendability, we want to help everyone, especially when they're vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, proud of themselves, even so that they can be their true selves. And we can all journey together through life more happily. Our contribution is to work on brain health. As our brains grow stronger, healthier, all of us benefit, but we're thinking especially about those among us who struggle to sleep, who are overwhelmed by the barrage of information from the environment, who struggle within their bodies, who are crippled with anxiety. And so we developed a gentle, family centered program of whole brain games that boosts brain development, activates the brain's self-healing mechanisms, and leads to all sorts of really beautiful stuff. And so it's based on the science of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment. So while we're experts in brain development, you may say, we know that there is so much more that parents have to navigate, especially the emotional toil of watching your child struggle, the guilt that sometimes creeps in when things get hard, and the stigma that just too often keeps us silent. And that's why I'm so glad we get to talk today about how to recognize when things aren't just hard, but when they've crossed into full-on crisis. We'll also explore what it takes for parents to find the courage to ask for help without shame, and how the whole family can begin to heal together. And so I'm really excited to discuss this today with Austin Davis. Let me formally introduce him. Austin
Thank you.
Davis is the founder and CEO of Clear Fork Academy. It's a leading residential treatment center in Texas that helps teenagers struggling with mental health, addiction challenges. With over 15 years of experience in counseling, ministry, youth development, Austin brings a unique perspective on family healing that combines clinical insight with a deep commitment to community and faith. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Pastoral Ministry and a Master of Arts in Counseling. And he's spoken nationally, parents, educators, professionals, about how to support young people in crisis. And what sets Austin apart is, I would say, his grounded, compassionate approach. He has walked alongside countless families through some of their hardest moments, and he's seen firsthand how stigma and shame can prevent people from getting the help they need. And so today we're drawing on that experience to talk about all of that, how to recognize when it's time for help, how to move past the guilt, how to begin the healing journey, not just for our children, but for ourselves. And so thank you, Austin, for being our guest today.
Thank you for letting me. Pleasure.
I like to start all of our episodes by asking our guests if something happened to little Austin that planted the seed for where you're at today.
Man, it's been a series.
Mm.
So our name, Clear Fork Academy, is kind of has this imagery of a fork in the road, right? And so it's been a series of clear forks. Um, yeah, I think, my parents divorced at 10, and at 15, I went to church for the first time. And so there's this this faith thing that started at 21. I switched from this like church ministry path into this counseling path and licensure track. And so yeah, it's just been kind of a series of things. In the recovery world, they call me a normie, because I haven't I'm not in recovery, right? Like, so it's kind of different path for us to run and operate addiction treatment, mental health centers, and things like that. So,
And I mean, a lot of 10-year-olds have had their parents divorce. A lot of people have had, faith come or go. What's the difference with little Austin? Or, like, did something trigger in you? Like, was there a pivotal moment when you said, I'm going to help other people who struggle?
Yeah, I think it was that faith moment of conversion and coming to Christ and knowing that it was just an instant sort of calling. And I originally pursued that through my undergrad and pastoral ministries and like working in the local church. And then, um, yeah, there's kind of two things. There's just been this entrepreneurial drive and focus and this calling to help people. And so never knew if that was going to be in the local church or is this the kind of the middle segment of my life to where it's treatment. And then there's like a third segment, and
Yeah.
post 50, and on or whatever. So I think that's never going to go away. It may change shapes at times, but this motto we live by is just create new legacy. Like wherever we go, I want to be the fork in the road for somebody's life, whether it's um, you know, choosing a pair of shoes or choosing, a new way of living life through, therapy or counseling or aha moments.
It's I'm I've never shared this about me, and I think you've just opened up that opportunity for me to share with our audience that I li- it's a calling for me to be here. I don't have children with neurological conditions. A lot of those treatment programs, there's a path that starts because of firsthand exposure. And I didn't know about the word normie. Maybe I'll start using it. I used to say I feel like a princess because, nothing really hard like what happens to the families that we help
Right.
has been exposed. I remember a particular, and it's a faith-based story. It's a church. This sort of senior elder, I'm going to say, gave me a really powerful and pointed blessing. And he
Mm.
talked about, looking for the little ones and 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 that there would be a lot of traveling involved too. And at the time, I was in France. And I'm in Canada now. We've spent some time in the US, and there's probably something that's going to take us to Brazil. And so it's really cool to see, in hindsight, how feel like God has guided me to where we are today. And it sounds like it's a very similar journey that you've gone through.
That's amazing. We have as therapists, that's sort of kind of like a notch on the belt when you hear that phrase. I've never really told anyone this, but right. So that's cool.
See you like 5 minutes, and I'm already opening up. Um, so you've worked with many families, and I think there's one question that I'd like to ask you to start with, and it's how common is it for parents to overlook the signs that their child is in crisis? I'm thinking about families where the child is neurodivergent, but they've sort of gotten by a little bit of accommodation here and there. They've created a very nurturing and calm environment at home, and so he's always comfortable. And then something happens later on, maybe the first job or some pressure in high school, and then something breaks. It's kind of like an accident waiting to happen, but it was delayed. And I wonder how many of those stories you have and whether it's a big deal that it's addressed later in life. Is it better or should it have been addressed earlier? What do you see?
I think earlier the better. We see about probably 20% of our kids that are like undiagnosed neurodivergent in some fashion, right? And so they get to us because they've had suicide attempts, because they've been bullied, or they're using substances and ended up in the ER. And when we like boil it all down, we kind of come back to like this social awkwardness, this inability to communicate, or when they do communicate, it's just like every single word that they thought in their brain and there's no filter. Um, so yeah, I think um, number one, we live in a really fast-paced, rapid world with so many things kind of coming at us that we can overlook those nuances because they really are. They really are nuanced and can just be seen as oh, they'll grow out of it without not really knowing and understanding sort of the brain science behind some of that stuff.
Is this what you meant? In your book, you talk about it's just a phase. Parents will say, and they try and, is
Absolutely.
it really ever just a phase?
Well, when you're talking about Neurodivergence, probably not, right? Because that's the hardware. And then some of our kids, and a lot of these phrases come out from families who, grew up with parents, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and then they were maybe 60s, 70s, 80s. And so substance use was way, way different. If we talk about the substance use side, and that's what you hear a lot of those phrases of, oh, it's just a, teenager being a teenager. And so kind of in both cases, we try not to treat it as a phase, right? One is the hardware, and the other one's probably the software, the developmental part of their brain, the emotional IQ, the trauma, and those sort of things that they're carrying with them. So it's not just a phase. The more repetitions you have, I'm a terrible golfer because I played baseball my whole life, and I've had 10,000 repetitions of swinging that bat. And when I go and stand in front of that little white ball on the ground, it doesn't compute because the repetitions now have become what we call a maladaptive pattern of behavior. So it's kind of not really a phase if you continually to swing the club the same way.
Do you use that analogy often?
I do.
That, a baseball player among golfers will look like an idiot. And, this is a cool analogy for kids who are trying to fit into the golfing universe, but they're really baseball players. And we're
Right.
trying to shoehorn them. So neurodivergent people who, trying to be shoehorned into this world. We live in this very noisy, very, very demanding, lots of social assumptions, and we're trying to shoehorn all of those people in there.
Right.
That sounds like a good sort of
You could steal it.
Sunday sermon kind of analogy, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah, and that's we see that through scripture too, right? Like be in the world but not of it, right? You're created and designed this certain way to play this certain game. It may look like the same sport, but it's not. So yeah, you can take that a bunch of different directions.
So when a child is struggling and I'm trying to transition into this other area. I've got this other question I want to ask you, and I'm trying to transition elegantly, but it's not working out. So let me just ask you.
Go for it.
Often the parents carry a lot of the emotional and physical burden that their children also carry.
Right.
W- And I wonder if it sounds like it's not healthy.
Hmm.
But it sounds like it's something that I would not want to ask a mom or a dad to stop doing either, isn't it? Let's talk about scripture, bearing each other's burdens and that kind of stuff. But where's the balance? So a lot of our
Hmm.
audience, they have children with, neurological conditions. And so in that context, I'm thinking of moms and dads who carry the burden of the child will never be able to do this, and they kind of lost hope, and it's always a lot of the things that happen in the child's life feels like a failure. There's a lot of missed attempts at stuff, and there's a lot of report cards that are disappointing. There's a lot of embarrassing moments in public places. What advice do you have for parents?
I think it's gonna be twofold. Anytime you get on an airplane, that stewardess or whoever sits there and says, put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help those around you. I think that's just important is for any caretaker, myself included. We have, anywhere between 75 and 100 kids at a time. And I can worry about every one of those and 100 employees. I can worry about every one of those, but my alarm clock goes off in the morning. I wake up and do some meditation, reading, journaling, and then fitness. Those three or four or five things try to fit into somewhere in there during the day. So I know if I don't show up ready to go, somebody's going to get snapped at, or they're going to get half of me, or I'm going to check out, or something like that. And so I think self care is kind of a catchphrase, but it's just so important. And then the flip side of that coin is Reinhold Niebuhr's Serenity Prayer. That first part of it is God help me change the things that I can and really forget about the things that I can't. You've been given a child with a set of hardware that really can't change, I can't change that. And so maybe I surrender that back to you, and it is what it is. And when you're at the grocery store and there's an episode, it is what it is. I can't change it, but I am going to change the things that I can change. I can go get support. I can get help. We can do things like what you're doing and resources. So I think that's two sides of it, taking care of it, being proactive, and then really surrendering the things that are out of my control on a daily basis.
So the flip side of that is when you realize something has to change.
Yeah.
How do you find the balance between there's stuff I can't change, but how do you know what you can change and what you cannot change? Are there clues?
9 times out of 10, um, and I just made that up, right? But um, so I'm going to start when I think about change, I'm going to start focusing on me. So we work with teenagers 13 to 17 years old, and the thing that they want to change is their parents getting off their back, their teachers giving them A's, their siblings not being, a distract. They want everyone else to change before they want to look in the mirror. And so what we try to do is just flip that mirror towards them and say, okay, these patterns of behavior are probably why your mom's hovering on you, probably why you got the car taken away, probably why you're getting F's. So we really try to recalibrate or refocus where that energy needs to go. And then I think proper just sort of analysis, right? We sometimes live flippantly or don't take real accounting or stock of what's happening in our life of what is possible to change. And I think doing that and then creating systems and processes to really streamline the outcomes.
Can you share a story without sharing names, I guess?
Yeah, of how people have gone through the change process.
Yeah, yeah. And then, what
Oh
are the
gosh.
most common turning points you've seen? Like what, yeah.
Yeah, so we can take it from a couple of perspectives. We do a lot of like narrative therapy, Michael White, and sitting in the therapy session or group with a young man. Comes in first 30 days is cuss words, finger pointing, and just and this is kind of the just general narrative of all of our kids, and so each one of them kind of fit into this segmentation is you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem, get me out of here, I don't need to be in treatment. Middle 30 days is they go, oh crap, we've been doing this whole little dance for 30 days and maybe maybe I can change because I didn't get in that fight. I would usually get in that fight and I use that skill that we've been talking about. And so, I wonder if this is why my dad always yells at me or parental behaviors, reflect. And then the flip side is the same. We work with families over and over and over, and we look for catchphrases or keywords that sort of like send our kids into chaos. And we talk to parents and we sit with parents and we say, okay, hey, look, this is kind of like think about this as like software. There's a bunch of if-thens in this equation, and I bet we can predict the future. Let's go into this session, and I want you to say, Johnny, you're an idiot. I want to watch you, watch his face, watch his hands, watch his body language, watch everything just melt down, right? And it may not be that word that you said, idiot, but you said, why can't you do better? Right. And just watch him just flatline. Okay. And then the next session will come in and say, man, Johnny, I really, really appreciate how you gave effort today in treatment and how you're working with your therapist. And he's going to go, wait, is this my mom? Is this the same person? What did you do with her? So, that's sort of our goal is every single day, evaluating the patterns of behavior and then seeing kind of, well, I teach it as like dominoes, right? We have all these dominoes that we stack up. We always complain that the last one falls, but we don't look at the 200 behind it that have to fall first before someone uses drugs or cuts themselves or runs away or has sex with some stranger, right? Like we have to look at all 200 before we get to that last one. And so each one of those are just micro adjustments. And well, I'll do it in group, and we kind of identify the 3 or 4 in the middle, and we just take them out, and then we push the first, and like 10 or 12 fall, and they're like, "Holy crap, the last one didn't fall!" Like, duh, because we didn't, we broke the chain.
So, what role does the family play in I want to go further back. We talk in your world, when by the time you get the kids, the crisis has happened, right? And you're trying to reverse the effects of all those dominoes falling all the time. And then,
Right.
there's a lot of them, the sequence repeating over and over. I suspect that a lot of this stuff is family members that contribute to some of those dominoes falling. And so I expect that you're going to say, "Oh, yes, of course, the family plays a big role." And I'm trying to be specific about let's think for a second about our families who have this child who has a neurological condition, and their biggest concern is they don't know if the kid will ever be able to live a happy, independent adult life.
Right.
What have you learned about working with families and the role that parents play and the role that siblings play and the role the community plays that you could share with those parents who are worried, deeply worried?
Um, I think at the basis of all human action is just our communication. And the better we can communicate. I have 3 kids, and my 2 daughters. I have 2 daughters and a son, and since day one that they could communicate, it was me on my knee or sitting on the floor, sitting in front of them, and saying, "What are you feeling?" And then, "Are you communicating that appropriately to me?" And trying to match those things, because I'd imagine all of your families and listeners are there's some sort of fear at some point. And when we live and communicate out of fear, it doesn't always come out the way we want it, right? We want to show compassion and love and care, but when fear sort of is that filter, um, doesn't look the same. So that would be my continual, education is what's my level of fear, 0 to 10, how do I measure that? And then am I communicating out of that, or am I communicating sort of out of love?
I imagine that surrendering those things that you cannot change has a lot to
Absolutely.
do with how you feel as a parent in a situation. So, you know, that prayer sounds like it applies. Do you find yourself teaching people outside of that context of addiction and struggles and challenges with teenagers? Do you find yourself sharing that in other situations? How would,
So
yeah.
yeah, as a business owner and entrepreneur, like it communicates the same. If you're working with an employee who is underperforming, well, there's a fear there. There's a fear that they're underperforming, which is going to affect the balance sheet of the P&L. And then, oh my God, you're homeless, right? Like it could really scale really fast when we let fear take over. And so you have to look back or I have to look back and go, okay, I've been here before. Here's how I solve the problem. And at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. You're not going to be homeless. Your wife's not going to leave you. You're not going to go bankrupt. Like, it's a problem in a siloed situation. So yeah, I love taking the same ideas and concepts we work with families on and bringing those into sort of like entrepreneurial business settings. It's kind of the same curriculum, if you will.
It feels like a vindication of the truthfulness of
Mm.
that approach if you can apply that principle in, almost everywhere. If you can boil it down to a couple of concepts and then use it everywhere and it works. So I'm thinking about my parents. Okay, so they've learned what they can change. We haven't talked too much about that. You talked about the child working with you to realize that they have a lot to do with how the dominoes fall. So, what do you say to parents to help them realize that they have the biggest change the most influence they have on a situation is a change they could make on themselves?
Right.
And how do you make that happen? How do you turn a parent from feeling powerless to feeling capable of changing themselves?
Yeah, I think change begins knowing what's broken or what needs to be fixed. So we early on, one of my mentors, I talked about we use this conversation. We try to identify what change is, and change is really for me just something different. If I don't like my life, then something different has to happen. Um, right now, I'm building a classic truck, a 71 C10, and I got a Corvette motor, and I put it in it, um, and it won't run. It's got all these electronics in it. Um, I just don't know what to change because I don't know the right questions to ask, or to go through a set of like Q&A with it to without taking it apart, putting it all back together and changing it apart, right? Like, so I think a proper evaluation of where you want to go and then back into those dominoes, right? So the adverses of that scenario still works is like, I want this in my life. Well, what's the domino right before it? What's the domino before that? And having I'm big on sort of a rubric, right? Like there's no one answer, but I think if you have an offense or a rubric, it fits in different situations. So, all the business books say begin with the end in mind. And so if you want more time with your spouse or you want a happy marriage, right? You maybe have to spend more time. Well, what is that time? That time is on Tuesday. What part of Tuesday? Tuesday at 6 p.m. Well, where? On the back porch. So you kind of build those building blocks. But I think it just starts with an analysis of what needs to change or what's broken.
Thank you. So I another big question that I had for you from reading the book was this idea of the turning point, right? They're exhausted, they're scared, they're unsure what to do next, but they know something has to change. In the case of a family that we work with and our listeners who have, a child with a neurological condition, a cognitive impairment, let's say, or a speech impairment, and they've tried and tried and tried all sorts of things and nothing is working. They know something has to change. What's the simplest first step that they could take?
We're talking about internally with the family
As a parent, as a
as a
person
parent.
who cares for a child like this in this challenge.
I so again, I'll use that truck situation, or we'll use our current situation. I think the first thing is just ask for help. When you're stuck on a problem, an outside set of eyes is like 1,000 times more valuable than you just staring at the problem all day long. Um, and I think it was, Einstein talked about, a problem can't solve itself in that closed system. So the system has to be open. And so I think this is prideful humans. That's the last thing that we want to do is let somebody else into our mess that may be more judgment on us or reinforce our inabilities or capabilities. And so I think in order for change in this scenario, like it's going to take a community of people to help raise that child, professionals, non-professionals. Um,
Do
yeah.
you have a story of a parent or a set of parents they hesitated for a very long time to seek help because of the stigma, because of all the things you said? Do you have a story of how I want to encourage, we've got some
Yeah.
families listening right now is like, I feel very private about our situation. It's not their business. I don't want them to know about this.
Yeah.
So give us a success story. How does it end, and how beautiful is it to take that step of, okay, be vulnerable and ask for help?
Yeah, we help about, 500 to 800 kids a year for the last, 7 years. And I think every single one of them, that first phone call is um, shameful, right? And helping them overcome, unless they've been through this 9 times. And
Hmm.
but I had one mom, you know, she's calling and she's like, yeah, my kid's got these scales in the back of the car, and then I found a gun and then this baggie of stuff, but I really don't think he's selling drugs, right? So, there's some education there, there's some denial there needs to happen. Um, I had a kid, one time we're doing anger management, and I was like, hey, Jack, I really think you're an angry person, just like kind of like there's just this boiling over inside of you. And, we kind of go back and forth and back and forth. And he ends up throwing a chair in the middle of the group room. I'm not effing angry, and stormed. Um, so it's bringing awareness, to
So what happened to that dad or that you thought of when you're recalling that first phone call?
so it's nurturing. So what we have to do anytime, because again, when you bring another set of eyes into a situation, um, somebody can point it out, right? Like you paint a wall and you think you painted it good, right? Because you've been staring at it all day. Somebody else comes in and go, oh, you missed that, you missed that, you missed that. Um, that's our job, is to nurture. So that dad, that parent, um, after several phone calls, after, identifying signs and symptoms, he goes, oh, that makes sense. And what do you think about this, and this that we, and like, absolutely, that's part of this journey that you're on, is just really helping all of our parents begin to see signs, symptoms, results, and putting them in sort of a narrative that really says, you're in chaos, this is out of control, and you need help. um, 99% of our phone calls, and sessions, that's just our continual narrative, all the way from our first phone call to our alumni group that we follow, for a couple years at a time. We get kids that still call us and say, "Hey, I graduated 6 years ago." So that's this continual narrative for us.
Um, Faith plays a big role in your work, my work. How can faith, or let's say any deeply held belief system, how have you seen that help families navigate a crisis? Does it make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at some of the sociological studies on like longevity, um, faith community adds like 12 or 15 years to the average person's life, just in terms of like a longevity metric. Um, Obviously, the 12 steps in AA, the first three steps are faith centered, and is having a God of our own understanding, and so like number one is like I got a problem. Number two is there's a God greater there's something out there greater than me that can help restore me to sanity. And then step three is, I turn my will and my life over to this God of my own understanding. And so I think it is um, a huge part of this process of hope, really, because that's what I think a lot of your listeners or parents in crisis need is hope.
Mhm.
My hope every day is found in Christ, and I try to bring that in some fashion to what we do on a daily basis with our families. And so um, I think there's a both and with like clinical intervention and faith. They have to be sort of intertwined. Because a lot of kids have some trauma and families have some trauma that need to be taken care of in a clinical way. And then faith has to sort of undergird and go alongside of that.
And what about family? How does family, can you summarize the role, family or without a family? Do you see a difference? Do you see some kids who come without a family network?
Yeah. And that's part of our screening process is because we know our investment in the kid is like null and void if he goes back home to a family system that doesn't want to work, doesn't want to change. I think of a kid right now, it's like, man, we're doing such good work. Um, and I know her dad's going to continue to drink and use drugs. And he's going to continue to yell. He's going to continue to shame, and he's going to continue to, um, you know, uh, undo all the work that we're doing, and it breaks my heart. And until the family unit heals, that child is going to have difficulty.
Thinking about, what it's, to convert this into the situations that our audience is familiar with. And I think what they're thinking is, what am I doing as a parent that is contributing to my child's unhappiness?
Yeah,
It's easy to say, well, their brain's broken or something like that, and that's why they're unhappy. And so the child doesn't speak back. For example, it's an example I use a lot. And when a child doesn't speak back, the child, um, the parents and the siblings, they often stop talking too. They stop initiating conversations. And so they end up in a very transactional type of relationship. Go and do this, go and do this, go and do this. No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. I need
sure.
this. I need this. Here it is. But that's it. So the relationship feels barren.
Yeah,
And I imagine that some of it must play out in your cases too. So how do you bring the family together? Is there something the parent has to do on their own? What advice would you give to a parent who says, "Yeah, I'm in that boat. I'm in that barren relationship. But I want a connection with my child." What do you say
yeah.
to them?
My first reaction is like, what are the family's set of values? Um, and generally, what you'll see is families don't have a prescriptive, written out set of values that they live by. Um, and if there's no like compass pointing in a direction, then anything goes. There's no standard of evaluation or marker that's established. And I think that'd be my encouragement is to sit back and kind of evaluate a family value or a core value kind of way. What are the 3 to 5 or 7 ideas that you want to live by? And then put things in place to make those things happen. Um, it's just that's how we live our life. We have 7 family values. My wife's an educator. I'm a therapist, and so these are the things that we want to live by, like fun. As a business owner, as a type A person, fun isn't on my radar often. It's work, 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 work. But when my 9-year-old asked me 2 days ago, can we go outside and have a pillow fight on the trampoline? I was like, you know how much time and things that I have to take care of around the house. I just put it all down. We grabbed all the pillows after the back porch, and for 20, 30 minutes, we just beat each other because fun is a value for our family. And we want to have those moments.
So you're saying if you want to develop a relationship with a child when some of the natural things that help foster a normal relationship aren't there, you have to make it one of your family values, sort of. Are you talking about mantra kind of stuff, or
Yeah,
how is it so that okay, I have to remember when my child comes to me and has a transactional conversation, I need to piggyback on that because our value is connection.
connection.
And
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And so we're not perfect at that. There's times where we miss the mark, but it's not perfection. It's kind of just it's a goal. We're always trying to get there. I'm going to miss the mark sometime, but if I constantly have in the back of my mind, so another one of ours is unity, and what we say is that Davises show up. And we got a friend who's got just had knee surgery, and she's got a yard, and she's got things to do, and so what are we going to do? Like we got on our calendar to go show up. All five of us, we're going to go and we're going to clean the house. We're going to do the yard. We're going to take care of a friend of ours who just had surgery. And so it's not convenient, but we've established a value of community or unity. Um, and that's what it helps prescribe what we do with our time, with our money, with our lives.
All right. Well, I think this is a I think we've peaked. I feel like we've peaked with our episode. And so I want and I think I'm looking at this perfect time. Okay, let's stop there. So the question is, what is truly the most important thing to you as a parent? Think of your child, think of your family, think of the things that you are missing, the thing you feel guilty or a little bit ashamed of, and then set some values, discuss them, some kind of family council. What do we want to do? And that's going to drive and remind how you going to interact, be. Um, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing what the other five values? I think I picked up on the Davises show up and the Davises have fun. You said you had seven.
Yeah. So honor, we have this biblical command to honor mom and dad, and then we want to honor one another. And then whoever God is, he is to us, but honor, unity, sacrifice. Um, we go the extra mile. We do things that we don't normally, that aren't comfortable, right? Like you want to be healthy. You can't just eat whatever you want. So there's an element of sacrifice, both with time and money and relationships. Transparency. We just talk about building trust, and from an early age. I'm always asking our kids what's going on inside, and that goes both ways. And so I come home and say, hey guys, like today was a terrible day. I have to be silent at dinner and I may not be engaging, but I have to kind of go inward right now. And so I want to be transparent with that. Legacy, we do things that stand the test of time. And so again, time, money, efforts, we want to plant seeds and not just do things that are consumer oriented. And then excellence, we want to set the bar for things around us, not to have the most expensive things or best things, but to inside of us show up and go, there's something different about that kid. And I think as a parent, that's one of the greatest honors is when you show up with three kids and they're like, oh my God, you brought your kids, and they are amazing. That's kind of cool. And then fun we talked about. So there's seven of them.
So does that make up a word? I couldn't. I
It,
was trying to
it,
think quick if it makes
it
up a word.
does. It's hustle, HUSTLNE, and then fun.
Hustle. All right. Well, so there you go. Here's an example of how a set of values, that sounds like a word. We have one at home, and I didn't realize, yeah, it could be used as a set of values, a mantra, and it's apples together. Our name means apple orchards in Portuguese, and so we found and it apples together comes from the My Little Pony cartoon series.
Good.
And so there's a song that goes with it. And it's made a difference. I can see that our kids stick together in
Right.
ways that I don't see other siblings stick together. You know, when they grow up, we got a couple married kids, and so they live in all different cities, but they show up. They show up for one another. And I wonder how much of that My Little Pony mantra, I think it made a difference.
Think
So
so.
there you go. Here's an encouragement for all of you here. Have a blessed week and come up with a good mantra and a good set of values.